Okay guys, in today's video we're going to be taking another look at ANKR after most recently we've seen a 21% bump in the ANKR price. We're going to talk about what's been going on both the short-term views and of course those long-term views for ANKR. As we get into this video guys, if you do think this is useful and informative, hit that like button. I really do appreciate it. If you're new, make sure you've subscribed, hit the bell, tapped on all, and you won't miss another ANKR update. Right guys, with that said, done and out of the way, let's jump down and talk about everything ANKR, what's recently been going on here with the ANKR coin and what to expect next. Right, so as you can see, this is just the hourly view. We're not going to start here. We're actually going to shoot back up into our weekly, but obviously you can see that most recent price action of ANKR. It's been a pretty significant 10 hours there before we had a bit of a correction. So the first thing that we're going to do is actually just jump up into our weekly view. Just pull this back down into perspective, guys, so we can see exactly what is going on. So we obviously have a nice 5 impulse wave to the upside, Elliott theory. We've spoken about this on many occasions. And this actually started back in 2020, okay, of March crash of 2020. That really kickstarted many of the altcoins in this particular pattern. And ultimately, this actually kind of went all the way up here towards the 10th of August, where it reached its first top of wave 1 before having a small pullback into wave 2. Then wave 3 obviously took it to its all-time highs and those fantastic prices that we've been enjoying recently. Obviously, the correction on the 4th wave, bringing it down into another accumulation zone, as highlighted to the member section as well. So anyone who is members will know that we were talking about this being the accumulation zone here for ANKR. We actually dropped down into here only on a handful of occasions, and you did not stay in this area for very long. So this was a key area for buying, for making sure that you have enough pretty decent positions before we go ahead and actually move up into our 5th wave, where we go up to about $1 or so. At least that's my expectations. Now, obviously on this weekly view, it's always good to obviously understand exactly what's been going on from a candlestick perspective, but also we like to obviously reference our stochastic relative strength index. And this is something that we've been talking about recently quite a bit, because ultimately everything is incredibly oversold, and ANKR is no exception to this. We take a look at where it was just last week. It had a rating of 0.9, and at the point of recording this video, it has gone up to 10.4 after a significant bump in price, but it is still oversold. Anything lower than 20 is technically oversold. So the weekly chart has such huge potential to see what happens here in the rest of quarter 3 going into quarter 4 and into 2022. We've got a lot of ground to cover, and ANKR is finally actually starting to have a pretty decent move out of this correction wave, and now we're looking to kind of get that closed candle above some key areas so that we can move up into this 5th wave. And the expectations of wave 5 could be completely blown out of the water, considering the magnitude of what ANKR is doing and the things that they are doing as a core product. So I think ultimately it's going to be one to watch out for, and it's always good to know where we are starting, right? So we obviously have that big overview. It's easy to see exactly what is going on when we zoom out. We can see that there's a good target in mind, and things are moving and progressing nicely towards that target. Okay, so obviously we take a look at where things were all on this journey. Unlike many of these other projects, ANKR hasn't really been down too much in terms of being oversold, right? We take a look at where it was at the high here. We take a look at wave 2. This is the first point where really it kind of came down to those really low oversold areas, right? And then obviously going up into the peak overbought here and coming back down into oversold. So right now, if we're repeating this kind of 3rd wave scenario, but over here in this 5th wave, right? What we're looking to try to do is now do a very similar pattern with our stochastic relative strength index over here, and this will actually then grow the price of ANKR significantly. Okay, so before we jump down into our daily, I do want to acknowledge the artificial intelligence over at 𝗖𝗢. The overall rating for ANKR is a B2 rating, so that's a pretty significant rating. It's obviously got much more correction and much more I guess, promise now than it had previously. In the last couple of months, these ratings have all been indicating serious warnings in terms of being rated D, etc. But obviously, knowing where the bigger view is, sometimes that smaller daily kind of data is not exactly going to be helpful to you as an investor. It's good to understand the bigger views, jumping into these daily views and understanding what this artificial intelligence is telling us about the daily data. Here we obviously have the AMI-HAD ratio now actually reflecting a B2 rating. rating. So 𝗕𝗎𝗔 ratio is all about your liquidity. So that's looking pretty good here for ANKR at the moment. The fear and greed index has risen all the way to the A1 rating, the best it can be. Previously, this was down there at rating of D, indicating that there was a lot of fear, extreme fear in the space. Right now, you're seeing extreme greed for ANKR. So again, we'll have to reference that as a bit of a warning potentially, because when we see us go into these extreme greed scenarios, ultimately that's usually where people tend to take profits. With that being said, we obviously have to couple this data with the charts as well to see what else is going on. And obviously when we take a look at that weekly chart, we obviously have good expectations of where things are going for the longer term rather than just daily. The other things that we can see here is the Sharpe ratio has finally caught up with that 50-day average, and this is still rating D at the moment, but in the next couple of days I think we're going to flip ANKR and we're going to start seeing maybe B, B2, B3 ratings for the Sharpe ratio. So the risk to rewards, or the risk to holding ANKR, is becoming less and less important now, and it's looking stronger and stronger proposition. Obviously, we have the return on investment still an A1 rating, the best that it can be. And again, this is testament to just how much ANKR has risen. When we were calling it out on the channel previously, ANKR was a very, very low cap coin, and now it's got some serious traction behind it, and it obviously is going to be growing significantly faster now in the second half of the year, closing Q3 strongly, I believe, going into Q4 really strong as well. So lots of kind of really good positive stuff from the 𝗖𝗢𝗠𝗠𝗘𝗥𝗦 dashboard. Check it out if that's of interest to you. So let's jump back down into our charts. This time actually let's talk about that daily data, right? So when we actually zoom in here, let me just get rid of this for a second. Let me just pull that down. There we go. So when we talk about this daily data, we obviously have the Fibonacci retracement tool on here from the all-time high down to the lows of the correction wave 4. Obviously this is the buy zone, right? We dipped into here twice, incredibly briefly. There was a couple of days here and a couple of days there, and that was it. And ultimately we've seen this correction now push to the upside. This area here, this yellow box area here, is where we want to see those closed candles above. This comes in basically anything above 18.1 as a closed candle is going to be a really strong signal, and we're looking for that close ideally to be a weekly closed candle above 18.1 cent. So that's the key area that we're looking for here. This is an area that you can get rejected from pretty quickly. So obviously with the amount of traction that we've had recently on ANKR, obviously we have to look and address what's going on with that stochastic. Currently actually at a maximum rating of 100, incredibly overbought on this daily chart. So contrary to what our weekly chart is saying, where it's incredibly oversold, we have an incredibly overbought daily chart, okay? And this is what is being represented in terms of that extreme greed scenario when we're talking about that 𝗖𝗢𝗠𝗠𝗘𝗥𝗦 dashboard and the artificial intelligence. They're looking at things like this, and it's saying that ultimately there's a lot of people buying up ANKR right now. This is quite obvious. Over the last few days, we've seen significant push. But above and beyond this, also it's been identified as extreme greed. So again, we have to have a bit of caution here that there is going to be a correction on this daily chart at some point. Thing we don't know is that time yet. And obviously following Bitcoin's action of what's going on between the weekly, the daily, and the hourly, ANKR is in a very much a similar position, right? We see that the hourly is often oversold, with the daily being overbought, and obviously our weekly is oversold as well. So we have two charts in line, with one anomaly being the daily chart at the moment. So again, we obviously have to understand that there is going to be a correction. It doesn't seem to be coming anytime soon, but we have to monitor that situation and monitor what is happening on our hourly views, our daily views, and our weekly views. So right now, obviously the Fibonacci retracement tool is a fantastic way to obviously know where we are likely to go, where we're going to find major resistance, along with any other kind of resistance lines that we come across as well. We take a look where we actually ended up today in terms of pushing the price up, and there's an obvious kind of resistance line here at about 10 cents. So again, we've got a bit of a pullback there. Now, the Fibonacci retracement tool does show 77 cents as the theoretical top, and obviously I've just marked the fifth wave at that dollar level. That to me feels like a pretty comfortable area where we're going to find a lot of psychological barriers. So it would be good to see if we can start ticking off a few of these extension levels, and as we progress on this journey, to see exactly what else is happening inside the data, if there are any other fundamentals that might shift and change and help us push for that a little bit more and head towards the dollar. But right now my expectations are 77 cents. That's what is being basically communicated to us in the technical data, but obviously we do like that idea of that $1 level, so we have marked that up as well. Okay, so obviously let's jump down into our hourly view and compare exactly what has been going on most recently, right? So obviously we have the breakup here, as we can see, pushing up, coming back down, back testing on 6.6, then pushing up from here, right? Sideways trading for quite a period of time. And then we've recently pushed right the way up here, right? And ultimately, you can see that we were oversold. We were all the way down here at 0.7, pushed all the way up to 100. This was sustained for several hours. And this is what you're going to see happen on the daily chart, in my opinion. You're going to see it sustained for several days before eventually getting a correction. And when we see that correction, it doesn't mean that the price is going to drop all that far either. It could also be that the price actually only drops a really small, minuscule amount, but the momentum behind it drops out and allows that stochastic relative strength index to truly drop all the way down. And again, we're going to be monitoring that situation. But right now, you can see that we had a very minimal price correction, about 50% of the total move here. And what I'll do is I'll just make this a little bit bigger so you guys can see, right? So we had this really strong push to the upside here from over this point up to about here, which I think was a 10-hour move, 22%, 21% in that kind of range, right? So we saw a pretty significant push, right, in this move here. And then we saw the price of Anchor drop back down. And again, this happened reasonably quickly. So from here to here, which was another 8% loss, right? So we basically pushed up 22, lost 8% on the way back down, and then we've got down into a place where we're oversold again, which now puts us in a really strong position to now continue the growth of Anchor back to the upside, okay? So ultimately, with our stochastic being oversold and the fact that we were able to only lose 8% after a 22% bump, that now leaves us more room to now grow even higher. And this is what you need to see. We need to see that momentum shift. We need to see that fear and greed index really working for us. So what I will do is I'll throw on our volumes, and here you can see that growth volume, right? You can see that volume really coming in nice and strongly here in purchasing volume. And then as soon as we're going into the correction, you saw a decrease, a small bump here, but other than that, it was a decrease in volume. That was helping to protect the price, which meant you only lost 8% of that 22% bump. Now what we're looking for, the fact that we're oversold again, is now to see this volume grow once again in the same way that we saw this over here. And given everything that the 𝗲 dashboard has told us about Anchor, the fact that we are in a pretty reasonably good position in terms of liquidity, and the risk to rewards definitely starting to get a flip and a turn to it. We have the A1 rating, not only for the return on investment, but also from a greed and fear and greed index perspective. The peak end values at C2, I think that's going to get corrected to as well. And obviously, moving averages are doing well for us. So when we start reviewing everything that is going on, expectations should be that a sentiment should now continue to grow. Of course, there is a huge caveat to this, and that is if Bitcoin decides to do something different. If Bitcoin breaks its current patterns and actually starts to have a bit of a healthy correction to the downside, before it taking its next step up, then Anchor could also follow that pattern too. And again, when we take a look back and we can take a look at all these previous resistance areas, this is an area that we would probably want to come back down to a back test on in those scenarios. So look out for 8.4 if that were to happen. Otherwise, we should be on a pretty decent journey basically to continue the growth to the upside. And when we start thinking about where we are looking, the next area of 10.6 comes to mind, and a little bit higher here as we go to 11.5 cent. So there's a few areas of resistance that we could meet on this journey, and we could find ourselves on a bit of a step journey, right? We move up a little bit to 10.8, pull back, maybe down to where we were previously, 9.8, push up to maybe 11.5, back testing down on the previous 10.8 and so forth, right? And continue that journey until we enter our yellow box area. Nothing moves in straight lines. It's quite rare that they do. But if we do end up in a scenario where we consistently repeat this pattern, we should be entering this box within the next couple of weeks or so. So everything on Anchor is looking very, very good on both the hourly and of course that weekly view. The daily is the anomaly. But again, it's always good to keep an eye on that because it is going to have a correction at some point, and we want to make sure that it is a minimal price correction and a more severe stochastic relative strength correction. With that being said though, guys, as investors and as long-term people who are basically investing in the crypto space, it's always important to understand the bigger picture and to obviously keep in mind where we are going. And obviously that fifth wave is going to be towards the end of the year, beginning of 2022, although timing is the hardest thing to gauge. With this being said, ultimately the expectations are still there. 77 cent, maybe pushing a little bit higher towards that dollar level. Those are my thoughts on Anchor for this year, and obviously we'll keep you updated with anything else that may happen in terms of price action on Anchor or any other fundamental news. Guys, if you found this a brief update on Anchor useful and informative, then do go ahead and hit that like button. I really do appreciate it. If you're new, make sure you've subscribed to the channel, hit the bell, tapped on all notifications, and you won't miss another Anchor update. Guys, with this said, done, and out of the way, I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.